In the shadowed halls of the Alexandria Continuum Research Institute, Professor Lina Moreau stared at the holographic projection hovering over her desk. The ancient Shen ring symbol rotated slowly in three-dimensional clarity, its etched curves glowing faintly blue against the darkened lab. The symbol had been found in an unmarked tomb beneath the shifting sands of the Egyptian desert. Historians dismissed it as an artifact of spiritual protection, but Moreau knew better. For decades, whispers in theoretical physics circles had alluded to the Shen ring as more than a symbol of eternity. Theory suggested it encoded a mathematical framework for creating closed time-like curves, pathways through spacetime where timelines could loop back upon themselves. Such a discovery would revolutionize humanity's understanding of physics, unravel the mysteries of causality, and perhaps even rewrite history itself. Lina's eyes darted across the lines of code and ancient hieroglyphs displayed on her screens. Her AI assistant, Elias, processed the encrypted data recovered from the Shen artifact, comparing it with contemporary temporal mechanics. Professor Elias's smooth voice interrupted. The algorithm embedded within the Shen ring appears to stabilize quantum fluctuations, forming what we hypothesize as a controlled spacetime loop. Preliminary simulations indicate it could be utilized to travel within defined temporal boundaries. Lina felt her breath hitch. The implications were staggering and dangerous. Defined temporal boundaries, Elias, she demanded, leaning closer to the screen. The curves cannot extend beyond the physical or historical range of the Shen ring's origin point, Elias explained. Travel is limited to the span of time within which the artifact exists. The algorithm ensures self-consistency, mitigating paradox risks. In other words, the past was accessible, but only up to the age of the artifact. Lina glanced at the Shen ring resting in its containment case, a gleaming gold circle inscribed with intricate glyphs. Dated to approximately 2600 BCE, it was ancient but remarkably preserved. It was the oldest link to a time when humanity's understanding of the universe was far more profound than modern science could comprehend. Run the loop, Lina instructed. Show me the simulation. The lab dimmed as holographic projections filled the room. A miniature version of the Shen ring floated before her, encased in pulsating light. Around it, space-time warped and twisted, forming a spiraling tunnel of energy. Inside the loop, an image appeared. A fragment of the past captured like a reflection in a rippling pool. A procession of ancient Egyptians moved in solemn formation, their hands bearing tools and scrolls. Lina's heart raced. The simulations were consistent. This wasn't just a theoretical possibility. It was a roadmap. But Lina wasn't the only one aware of the Shen ring's potential. 3 levels beneath Lina's lab, hidden from the world, a shadowy council convened. Representatives from powerful global factions watched the same simulation Lina had initiated. The holograms cast eerie reflections over their stern faces. The Shen algorithm must remain under control, said Director Marcus Hensley, the head of a clandestine global organization called Temporal Accord. His voice carried the weight of authority. If this technology falls into the wrong hands, the consequences are catastrophic. Another figure, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward. Do we have assurances that Dr. Moreau is unaware of our surveillance? She's focused on the science, replied Hensley. But we need to act before she realizes the true scope of what she's unlocked. The silver-haired woman smirked. But we can't allow her to dig any deeper. Time is pliable, but our history must remain as it is. Back in her lab, Lina couldn't shake the feeling she was being watched. She dismissed it as paranoia. Years of working on groundbreaking research had taught her to live with the weight of scrutiny. Elias, she said, breaking the silence. If we applied the algorithm practically, what would be the requirements? Extreme precision in quantum entanglement and vast energy reserves, Elias replied. The Shen ring serves as both a stabilizing artifact and a temporal anchor. Without it, the loop would collapse. The mention of energy reserves reminded Lina of her greatest challenge. Harnessing enough power to activate the Shen algorithm would require tapping into resources beyond what her institute currently possessed. But she had an idea. The artifact hummed faintly in its case, as though it sensed her intent. Could it truly anchor time? Could it carry her back to the moments she longed to see with her own eyes? Moments of discovery, innovation, and perhaps even calamity. She thought of the ancient procession in the simulation and how close humanity had been to unlocking the secrets of time millennia ago. Elias, begin preparations for a scaled test, Lina said. We'll start small. Probe into the past. Night fell over Alexandria, the city outside alive with its usual vibrancy, unaware of the monumental experiment taking place. Lina stood before the Shen ring, her team reduced to just her and Elias. Trust was a scarce commodity in a world where knowledge of time travel could rewrite global power dynamics. The probe, a sleek cylindrical device lined with sensors, was ready. It was tethered to the Shen ring's energy field by streams of blue plasma. Activating sequence, Lina announced. The air in the lab grew thick, charged with static. The Shen ring glowed brighter, and the space around it warped. Lina watched as the probe shimmered, its physical form bending under the strain of temporal flux. Temporal insertion successful, Elias reported. The probe has entered the timeline of 2600 BCE. Lina held her breath. Data from the probe streamed onto her monitors, displaying the sands of ancient Egypt, pyramid construction sites, and workers moving under the blazing sun. The probe's cameras captured it all in breathtaking clarity. This wasn't just history, it was alive. Suddenly the feed flickered. A shadow passed over the camera lens. The image distorted. Something's interfering, Elias warned. The feed stabilized for a brief moment. A figure appeared, robed in white and adorned with an intricate headdress. They looked directly at the probe, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They raised a hand and the screen went black. Lina's heart pounded. What was that? Analyzing, Elias replied. The figure exhibited energy signatures similar to those emitted by the Shen ring. Before Lina could respond, an alert blared through the lab. Unauthorized access. Someone was trying to breach the facility. She turned toward the door as it hissed open, revealing armed agents clad in black. At their center stood Director Hensley, his expression a mixture of determination and regret. Dr. Moreau, he said calmly, this research is over. For your safety and ours, you're coming with us. Lina backed away, her mind racing. Her gaze flicked to the Shen ring, still glowing with residual energy. She knew what she had to do. Elias, she whispered, initiate emergency sequence. Activate the Shen algorithm. Are you certain? The AI asked. Do it. The lab filled with a blinding light as the Shen ring surged to life. Lina felt a pull, like gravity itself had turned inside out. The agents shouted, but their voices faded as Lina's surroundings dissolved into a cascade of swirling energy. And then silence. When Lina opened her eyes, she stood in the middle of a vast desert. The heat was oppressive, the air thick with the scent of earth and history. In the distance, workers toiled on a pyramid, their chants carried on the wind. But she wasn't alone. The robed figure from the probe stood before her, their glowing eyes studying her intently. Welcome, traveler, they said in a deep, resonant voice. You seek the secrets of time, but you must first understand its cost. Lina's journey had only just begun. Lina stared at the robed figure, her mind racing with questions. The figure radiated an aura of both wisdom and power, their presence commanding attention. The sand beneath her feet felt oddly real, warm, grainy, and unmistakably ancient. Who are you? Lina asked, her voice trembling slightly. How do you know about the Shen algorithm? The figure smiled faintly, as though amused by her question. Once, I was the keeper of the Shen ring's knowledge. My people were the architects of time, the ones who first discovered the loops that bind existence. Kar gestured toward the towering pyramid in the distance. Workers hauled massive limestone blocks, their chants rhythmic and steady. What you see is more than a monument. It is a nexus, a stabilizer for the Shen algorithm. Without it, the timelines unravel. Lina's scientific instincts kicked in. You're saying the pyramids are anchors for time travel? That they stabilize the closed time-like curves created by the Shen ring? Precisely, Kama replied. The Shen algorithm cannot function without temporal anchors. The pyramids were constructed not merely as tombs but as cosmic tools, ensuring the balance of time. Her mind swirled with the implications. Why has this been hidden from us? Why let humanity forget? Kemiar's expression darkened. Because power corrupts, Lina. The ability to manipulate time is not a gift. It is a burden. Those who sought to wield it for personal gain nearly destroyed everything. We buried the knowledge, hoping it would never surface again. Lina clenched her fists. But it did. The Shen ring is real, and so is the algorithm. I've seen it work. If this knowledge is so dangerous, why did you reveal yourself now? Kar stepped closer, his glowing eyes piercing. Because your world is teetering on the edge of disaster. Forces beyond your understanding seek to control the algorithm, to rewrite history for their own purposes. You must decide whether to protect this knowledge or let it destroy you. Before Lina could respond, the sands around them began to shift. A low rumble echoed across the desert. The pyramid in the distance flickered, its massive structure momentarily translucent. Kemar's gaze snapped toward it. They've found you, he said grimly. The guardians of the algorithm will not allow interference. Prepare yourself. Guardians? Lina asked, but before Kemar could answer, the ground erupted in a cascade of light and energy. From the fissures emerged humanoid figures made of shimmering golden light, their forms fluid yet solid. They moved with purpose, their glowing weapons humming ominously. Lina's heart raced. She had no idea whether these beings were friend or foe, but their intent seemed clear, to eliminate her. Run, Kamar ordered, his voice carrying the weight of authority. You are not yet ready to face them. Lina hesitated. What about you? I will hold them off, he said, raising his hands. A barrier of crackling energy formed around him, shielding them both momentarily. But you must survive. The algorithm must not fall into their hands. With no time to argue, Lina turned and ran. The desert seemed endless, her boots sinking into the sand with every step. Behind her, she heard the clash of energy as Kemiar engaged the guardians. She risked a glance back, only to see the shimmering beings tearing through the barrier, their golden forms relentless. She didn't know how far she ran before the sands gave way to stone. Lina stumbled into what appeared to be an ancient temple, its walls carved with intricate hieroglyphs glowing faintly. The air inside was cool, a stark contrast to the scorching heat outside. The Shen ring symbol was everywhere, etched into the walls, the floors, and even the ceiling. This place wasn't just a temple. It was a sanctuary for the algorithm. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, atop which rested a larger version of the Shen ring. This one pulsed with energy, its glow illuminating the room. As Lina approached it, a voice echoed in her mind, a voice not her own. The Shen algorithm is not a tool. It is a responsibility. Will you bear its weight? She hesitated, her hand hovering over the glowing ring. The air seemed to vibrate with an unseen force. Lina knew that touching the artifact could link her directly to the algorithm, granting her unprecedented understanding. But at what cost? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps. She spun around to see Director Hensley entering the temple, flanked by agents. His expression was cold. His eyes locked on the Shen ring. Dr. Moreau, he said. His voice calm yet commanding. Step away from the artifact. You don't know what you're dealing with. Lina's eyes narrowed. You followed me here. How? Hensley smirked. Did you think we wouldn't have contingencies for an event like this? The algorithm belongs to humanity, not to you. Humanity? Lina scoffed. Or the temporal accord. You don't care about preserving time, you care about controlling it. Hensley's calm demeanor cracked, his tone sharpening. We've seen what happens when this power is unchecked. Entire timelines erased. Futures obliterated. The The Shen algorithm is too dangerous for one person to wield. And yet you think your organization is qualified. Lina shot back, her hand inching closer to the artifact. Don't be foolish, Lina, Hensley warned. Touch that ring and you'll doom us all. Lina hesitated. She could hear Kemiar's voice echoing in her mind, urging her to protect the algorithm. But could she trust him? Could she trust anyone? The room trembled as the Golden Guardians burst into the temple, their glowing forms filling the space. Chaos erupted as the agents opened fire, their bullets passing harmlessly through the beings of light. Hensley shouted over the noise. Lina, listen to me. If you activate the algorithm, there's no going back. Lina's heart pounded. Time seemed to slow as she made her choice. Her hand closed around the Shen ring, and the world dissolved into a cascade of light. Lina opened her eyes to find herself in a void, a space beyond time and reality. The Shen ring floated before her, its energy pulsating like a heartbeat. You have activated the algorithm, said Kemiar's voice, though he was nowhere to be seen. Now you must decide. Will you use it to save your world, or will you destroy it to protect the future? Lina stared into the glowing depths of the ring, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. Time itself seemed to wait for her answer. Lina felt the weight of infinite possibilities crushing down on her. Within the void, the Shen ring pulsed like a living entity, its glow reflecting the immensity of her choice. The voice of Kemiar echoed faintly in the empty expanse, his question reverberating in her mind. Save the world or destroy the algorithm to protect the future. She closed her eyes, trying to drown out the chaos. Yet even here, fragments of her life played out, memories of late nights in the lab, her mother's voice encouraging her to pursue her dreams, and the haunting image of the glowing-eyed figure from the probe. Each memory carried its own weight, pushing her closer to a decision she wasn't ready to make. When she opened her eyes, the void was no longer empty. Lina found herself in a vivid scene. She stood in an ancient Egyptian city, bustling with life. Merchants called out their wares, children played in the dusty streets, and priests in elaborate garb moved purposefully toward a massive temple in the distance. The pyramid she had seen earlier loomed large in the background, its golden capstone glinting under the sun. Before her stood Kemiar, his robes immaculate, his glowing eyes now softer but no less intense. You've entered the temporal nexus, he said, gesturing toward the city. This is the balance point, the moment where the algorithm was first activated, and where its fate will be decided. Lina frowned, her curiosity bubbling up despite the tension. This was the origin of the Shen algorithm. Kemiar nodded. The people of this time sought not power but understanding. They wished to observe the loops of existence, to see how the flow of time shaped their world. But even they underestimated the temptation such knowledge would bring. He pointed toward the temple. Inside is the heart of the algorithm, the original Shen ring and the device that stabilizes its loops. You must confront its keeper, the one who first wielded its power. Why? Lina asked. If this is the balance point, why not let history play out as it did? Kemiar's expression hardened. Because this moment is collapsing. Your activation of the algorithm created a fissure in time, and the Guardians are attempting to sever this loop entirely. If they succeed, all timelines connected to the Shen ring will vanish, including your own. Lina's breath caught. You mean my timeline could cease to exist? Not just yours, Kemiar said gravely. Every timeline shaped by the algorithm's influence. Entire threads of history could be erased. A distant rumble shook the ground beneath them. The pyramid flickered again, its structure wavering like a mirage. Kemiar's glowing eyes sharpened. You must go to the temple, he said urgently. Inside you'll find the answers you seek, but beware. The keepers of the algorithm are not as they appear. The temple loomed before her, its entrance flanked by towering statues of jackal-headed gods. Shadows pooled within its depths, and the air grew heavier with each step she took. As she crossed the threshold, the world behind her seemed to fade, replaced by an eerie silence. The interior was vast and dimly lit, with walls covered in glowing hieroglyphs. The Shen ring symbol dominated every surface, its circular form repeated endlessly like a mantra. At the center of the temple was a massive dais, and atop it sat the original Shen ring, a construct far larger and more intricate than the one Lina had found. Its energy pulsed in rhythmic waves, casting the room in shifting shades of gold and blue. A figure stood before the ring. They turned slowly, their form impossibly tall and regal. Their face was obscured by a shimmering veil, and their voice, when they spoke, resonated like a choir. "You are not of this time," the figure said, their tone neither welcoming nor hostile. "Yet you carry the mark of the Shen ring. Why have you come?" Lina hesitated, her words catching in her throat. She knew she couldn't hide the truth. "I activated the Shen algorithm in my time. Now, everything is unraveling, and I've been brought here to stop it." The figure tilted their head, as if amused. "You presume to control what you barely understand. The algorithm is not a mere tool. It is a living system. To tamper with it is to risk annihilation." Lina stepped forward, her resolve hardening. "Then help me understand it. If the algorithm is alive, if it's part of the balance of time, why is it collapsing now?" The figure raised a hand, and the glowing hieroglyphs on the walls began to shift. Images of spiraling timelines appeared, intertwining and looping. Lina saw flashes of her own era, the Guardians, the labs, and Director Hensley's shadowy organization. "The algorithm is sustained by harmony," the figure explained. "But your world has fractured that harmony. Competing forces seek to control what should remain free. These disruptions ripple backward and forward, threatening the very foundation of existence." "Then how do I fix it?" Lina asked, her voice rising with urgency. The figure's veil shimmered, revealing two glowing eyes similar to Chimera's. "The algorithm can only stabilize if one timeline is chosen. All others must fall away." Lina's stomach dropped. "You're asking me to decide which timeline survives?" "No," the figure replied. "The algorithm will decide, but only through you. To stand before the Shen ring is to become its conduit. It will weigh your intent, your choices, and your will. And then it will act." Lina approached the Shen ring, her heart pounding. The pulsing energy grew stronger, resonating in her chest like a second heartbeat. She reached out, her hand trembling as she touched its surface. The temple vanished. Lina stood in an endless expanse of timelines, each one a glowing thread weaving into an infinite tapestry. She could feel the weight of every choice, every possibility. The Shen algorithm pulsed through her, its power both awe-inspiring and terrifying. "Choose," the algorithm's voice whispered. "Guide the balance or let chaos reign." Images of her timeline flashed before her. Her work, her colleagues, her mother. She saw the Guardians, relentless in their pursuit. And she saw the shadow of Hensley, his ambition threatening to tip the scales. Lina clenched her fists. If she chose wrong, everything she knew could vanish. But if she hesitated, the Guardians might destroy all timelines, erasing existence itself. "What will you do?" She closed her eyes and made her choice. Lina opened her eyes, her decision resonating within her like a seismic shift. She stood amidst the swirling threads of the multiverse, her consciousness intertwined with the Shen algorithm. Its energy pulsed in time with her thoughts, reflecting her choice back at her. "I choose balance," she whispered, her voice steady. "Not control, not destruction. The algorithm must remain free to maintain the harmony of existence." The threads of time responded, rippling outward in a cascade of light. The algorithm began to weave them together, integrating Lina's intent into its structure. She could feel its relief, its ancient purpose aligning with her resolve. But the decision came with a cost. The temple reappeared around her, its walls trembling as the Shen ring's energy surged. The figure with the shimmering veil regarded her, their glowing eyes softening. "You have chosen wisely," they said. "But balance demands sacrifice." Lina's heart sank. "What kind of sacrifice?" "The timeline you know will continue," the figure explained, "but your presence within it will be erased. You will become a guardian of the algorithm, existing outside of time to ensure its harmony. Lina's breath caught. To save everything, she had to give up her place in it. Her work, her mother, her life. All would continue as though she had never existed. Is there no other way? She asked, her voice breaking. The figure shook their head. The algorithm requires a steward, someone who understands its gravity. You have proven yourself, Lina Moreau. This is your destiny. Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. She had come this far, and she couldn't falter now. Except, the figure raised their hands, and the Shen ring flared with light. Lina felt herself dissolving, her body becoming one with the algorithm's energy. Memories flashed before her. Her first steps, her mother's embrace, her breakthroughs in the lab. Each one faded, leaving only a profound sense of peace. In her absence, the Shen algorithm stabilized. The guardians withdrew, their forms fading into golden mist. The temple returned to its timeless stillness, the original Shen ring now dormant but ever watchful. Far away, in Lina's timeline, the lab where she had once worked continued its research. Elias remained active, its databanks filled with unexplained anomalies that hinted at Lina's contributions. Director Hensley and his agents, unable to locate her, disbanded their efforts to control the algorithm, their ambitions thwarted by forces they couldn't comprehend. The world turned as it always had, unaware of the sacrifice that had preserved its course. Somewhere beyond time, Lina stood in an ethereal expanse, her form now a glowing presence. She gazed at the tapestry of timelines, her essence interwoven with the algorithm's flow. She was no longer bound by mortality, no longer part of a singular reality. She was a guardian of the Shen algorithm, the silent steward of balance. As she watched, a single thought echoed through her. This is not the end. It is the beginning. And with that, the multiverse hummed with equilibrium, its infinite possibilities secure under her eternal watch.